Welcome back. Today, as part of my Chess Everyday program, I'm going to take a look at the English Opening, which I have been playing for a few months now. I don't remember exactly what date that I started, but I've pulled up my personal opening database here on Lichess, which I don't know how often this updates, but yesterday when I clicked C4 on here, it said there were only like 8 games, and I knew I had played dozens, if not more, but apparently it has updated since then, and now it's showing 269 games. If you're not familiar with the opening book here on Lichess, you can get to it from a variety of places. What I usually do is go to the Tools menu and then the Analysis board. You can go to Openings to explore a bunch of different openings, but if you go to the Analysis board and then click the little book icon down here at the lower right, it'll give you choices of the Masters database, the Lichess database, and the Player database, which mine starts off as me. I assume that yours would start off as you. And I've chosen me as white, and it shows how often I've played each of these first moves. Now, I have finally played C4 enough that it's become my second or third most common opening here. But anyway, these are the responses that I most often see. I also checked, because I still have a paid account on chess.com, I also checked the Opening Explorer over there, and it had about these same responses, though they were in a slightly different order, and there weren't quite as many games. So that's one reason I'm going to focus over here. Also, this opening book seems to work a little bit better than the one over there, at least in my experience. According to this, the response that I most often see is E5, which is a very normal response to the English Opening, and I believe it's what Stockfish recommends. It's one of the 2 moves that Stockfish recommends for the player with the black pieces. The other is knight to F6. And as you can see in the opening book here, that's the second most common response that I face. I'm a little bit less concerned with what Stockfish says here than what my opponents are playing against me, and those two together comprise about 63% of my English Opening games. The next most common response, according to this, is D5, which is the Scandinavian variation of the English, and that's usually the only move that I pre-move against. If I'm playing, say, a blitz game, when I play C4, I go ahead and pre-move taking D5 just in case they play that, because it's kind of startling. They thought they were surprising me, but then I surprised them. And sometimes their queen takes back, and sometimes they get the knight out, and either way I play knight to C3 on my next move. The fourth most common response I get is E6, and then it says I see C5, which is the symmetrical variation. I see G6, and I'm surprised that this number is so low because I feel like I've seen this a lot, but it's possible that I see knight to F6 first and then G6, and that's why I'm remembering G6 being so common. Also, there's D6 and C6. I have seen that a few times. That's, I assume, preparing to protect, the D5 square. But now we're getting into very low percentages, just 5 games with C6, 4 games with knight to C6, 3 games with B6. Then I've seen A5, B5, F5, G5, A6, H5, and I think that's all of them, because those last few were just 1 game apiece. Now the F5, I think, is called the Dutch variation, or the Anglo-Dutch defense. Okay, because if I had played D4 as my opening and they played this, then it's the Dutch defense. I do know that. But even though I have been playing the English for a few months, I haven't really put any study into it. Just as I decided to switch to it, I went through a few of the most common moves that the Lichess database said would be played against me, and just made sure that the next couple of moves I kind of knew what I was supposed to do. But what I'm going to do today, and this is for my own purposes, I'm just recording in case some of you get something out of this, and because I record most of my chess development. Anyway, what I'm going to do is try to go a few moves deeper on each of the most common ones. I'm going to focus on these top 4. Like I said, half the games that I play the English in, I see E5 as the response. And what I've been playing is knight to C3 here, and the engine says G3 is just as good. I've considered switching over to that. As you can see here in my database, knight to C3 is what I almost always play. Only 5% of the games that I play G3. Honestly, I don't even remember playing G3 as my second move here. But it says either way I would expect knight to F6 as their next move, but I don't know, since they could also play C6, which of course is preparing D5. Eventually. Not immediately, but eventually. But backing up, I think I probably will stick to knight c3 because it looks like it's just as good, and I have a decent win rate with it. My win rate with g3, the few games that I played there, is slightly higher, but that's not a big enough sample size. I'm winning more than half my games if I play knight to c3 here. And most often what I see is knight to f6, but I have seen knight to c6 here. I've seen bishop to c5 a few times. I remember that one being more common, but it says it's only 10%. And a wide variety of other moves as well, but queen to f6 has only happened once and I lost that game. Now it says this was just last month when somebody played this as their second move and I lost. But that's because I played g3 here. I wonder if that's what it wants me to play. It says g3 is fine, but knight to f3 is better. Okay, and I understand that they can't challenge the knight with the pawn because I could just take it. I really don't need to study this because, like you saw, it only happened once, but I could play knight to f3 here, and then what are they going to play? Well, that's not what I played, so it's not on my database anymore, but it looks like they should probably play knight to c6, and then I would play e3, which I assume is getting ready to develop this bishop so I can castle. Probably e3. And I really don't understand what the queen is doing there. But apparently that's why I lost in the game that I did face that in, backing up. When my opponent did put the queen out here, I played g3, and they played bishop to c5, and of course it looks like they're aiming for checkmate, so I play e3, although it says I could have played knight to f3 as well, and it would have been about the same. Okay, so I played e3, and I'm doing fine here. But now it says that there were 2 games in this position. So that means that there must have been another game where the opponent put the bishop out first and then brought the queen out. Because now we not only have this one listed that I lost, but we have another one listed that I won. Okay, so once we get to this position, it's transposed to a game that started a different way, and I have a 50% win rate. But in the one that I lost, my opponent played knight to e7 here, and I played the best move, which is bishop to g2. Then my opponent castled, which gives me +1 right off the bat. And I played knight to e4, which is a fork of those 2 pieces. Was that my mistake? Because it's not listed here. How bad was that? It took us down a little bit. And my opponent brought this queen all the way over here, and I should not have taken the bishop. Well, I didn't take the bishop. I got this knight out, which is fine, and I'm ahead. And I said I wasn't going to follow that out very far, but I did, didn't I? Going back here to the beginning, what I see most often is e5, and I can play knight to c3. In here, I see either one of the knights out to c6 or f6, and I see bishop to c5. But it looks like knight to c6, I have a pretty decent shot on those games, whereas black wins most of the ones that play here, so what should I be playing? It says I've played g3 100% of the time here, but I should be playing e3 right off the bat, okay? So I need to remember that. If the bishop comes out here aiming at f2, I can just go ahead and play e3 immediately, which I assume allows the knight out here, and I'm still intending to fianchetto, I think. But I haven't played any games this far yet, so that one move makes all the difference. But maybe we'll transpose here in a second, because when I play g3 in this position, my opponents have usually played knight to f6, and then here I played e3, which would have been a transposition, or bishop to g2, but neither of those are the top 3 moves. Okay, what about bishop to g2 is so bad? Okay, now I have a pretty good win rate on most of these games, except for knight to g4. If they come in immediately, now I have to play e3, and I'm doing fine. But I lost every one of those games. All 3 of the games that have reached this position I have lost, even though I'm supposedly up about +1. My opponents have played d6 here, queen to f6 here, and castling. According to Stockfish, one of their best moves is to drop back, but let's say they played d6, which somebody actually has played against me, and it's the top recommended move. Now I can just play d4 straight away, but I haven't. I've been developing in preparation to castle. It also says I can play b4 immediately, but wouldn't they just take it? It says that they wouldn't. What if they did, though? I'd be up +2 if they took it. Because of queen to a4 check. But wait, they're just going to block with the knight and defend the bishop. Oh, but I can take the knight with this bishop, and when they take back, I get this one? That's pretty sneaky. And I'm up +2. But that's never happened. At least not in my games. I'm sure it's happened in somebody's games. Let's see. Let's go to the Lichess database. Oh yeah, this has happened. This position's been reached 42 times on the Lichess players database. Okay, back to mine though. We did not reach those positions because here I should have played d4 straight away, pushing their bishop back. Well, it says that their bishop would go back no matter which one of these I played, but I'm pretty sure they would take here. If I played this, that would be their second best move. But if they took here, then I'm going to take back, and now their bishop drops back. Except I would have expected an opponent to put the bishop down this way or check me. But if they put the bishop here, we go back to the position where I can check on a4, and if instead they check me, now I get this other knight out, and the 2 knights defend each other, and their bishop is still hanging. And if they come to pin the knight, I pull the check maneuver again, and if they block with the knight, I can still hit this. And if they don't block with the knight, I can just take the bishop. So what I think I need to do is get out of my normal habit of things, and instead of going about my development intending to castle, I can just go ahead and play d4 here. But how bad is this, just out of curiosity? Is that why I lost? No, I'm still up nearly +1. But here my opponents have played a6 rather than either one of those moves. Well, the only opponent I've ever reached this position in. I can still play d4 now, which allows their bishop to go all the way back, or I can play h3. Either way, I'm up +1. Now what they should play here is castling, and then I'm going to play d4. Well, what I've learned so far in this little scenario is anytime that my opponent puts the bishop on c5 and has this knight on f6, and then they try to hop in here, you know, not only does e3 stop that, but then I can go ahead and play d4 pretty quickly because I'll have 3 defenders on that square, the knight, the pawn, and my queen. And they only have these 2 attackers on it. I have been waiting to play d4 until after I've castled, but Stockfish says I don't need to do that because even before I develop this in preparation for castling, I can play d4. Okay, I will try to remember that. I don't know if that would be the case if instead of moving that other knight forward, if they had played knight to c6 here, now they have 3 attackers on that square. And I've reached this position 9 times. And I've played e3 100% of the time here, but what I should be playing is knight to f3 now, even though they can press the pawn forward, protected by their knight. See, that's what I would expect. If I played this and they have their knight there defending e4, I would expect this pawn to come forward. But it says d6 is their best move, but what if they played here? And now I have to put the knight out on h4 now, or g5, but I would probably go to h4. And now they have this pawn in here, which I have 2 attackers on now, but they can defend it with queen to e7, but then I would castle, and they would castle, and I would play d4, but they would probably take with en passant, and then I would take back with my queen. What if they didn't take back with en passant? What if they took with the bishop? Then I attack the queen and the bishop at the same time, and if they come up here to protect the bishop, I just go ahead and take it. And it says that they would take, and I wouldn't trade right now. They would take my knight, but instead of taking back, I would play bishop to g5. I don't know if I would think to play bishop to g5 here or not, but it says that's my best move. Okay, if I did that, they would not trade for me just yet, but they could pick off a free pawn. It says that's bad. Their best move is just to slide back in here, but what if they just took the free pawn? Oh, I mess up their pawn structure. Okay, but they're 2 pawns ahead now, but their king is open. And I would want to play knight to d5, which is there. Oh, aiming for that pawn? No, aiming for this pawn, aiming for the f6 pawn, okay. But it says they would move it, so I couldn't take it, f5. If I played knight to d5, they would just push this pawn forward one. Well, except for that g-pawn being out of place, I don't understand why I'm ahead there, and also that's pretty far down a variation that I haven't discovered. But we were backing up to the idea of me having played f3. Knight to f3 here. That's what we were trying to explore. That's what I was trying to see here, is why wouldn't they play this? This is why I wouldn't play this now, because I would have to remember a pretty long series of events, or I would have to be able to calculate really well if my opponent didn't play any of those moves that I just saw in that variation. Because again, if they played here, I'd have to know to play to one of those 2 spots, knight to h4 being slightly better, adding an attacker to the pawn, and then if my opponent defended it, then we'd be in that situation that we just saw. So that's why I don't think I would play that here. It says a3 is my other good move, but e3 is, I mean, e3's done okay for me, so what if I played e3 here? I've lost 1/10 of a point of my advantage. And here, out of 10 games that have reached this position, most of my opponents have played d6, which usually is to get the bishop out, and a few of them have castled here, which is one of their better moves. But d5 is their best move, and it expects that I would take it. If an opponent played this here, yes, I would probably take it, which forces them to bring this knight somewhere else. Knight to b4 is their best one, and then I would play a3. But then they come in here, and I have to move my king. So no, I wouldn't play a3. I would play d4 here, because I've fallen into this trap already several times, because my queen can't hit that square yet. That's completely undefended. They check me. I have to move over one way or the other. And I still hope to castle, so I have to play d4 here so that they can't check me there. And they're going to take it, and I'm going to take back, and they're going to retract their bishop somewhere, or check me. They might check me, but that would be bad. Bishop to e7 is their only good move. Okay, so let's say they found that, and then I can get this knight here and castle. That makes a lot more sense to me if we're backing up to here, where it says I should play knight to f3. I've done that 100% of the time. I'm going to keep playing e3 here because it's working, and I understand that position a lot better than playing knight to f3, which gets hit by the pawn. Okay, backing up. The biggest number of my opponents in this position have castled. And again, the engine wants me to play knight to f3, but again, I'm worried about this pawn coming forward, and we get into a very similar series of events that we got into earlier. I've played e3 100% of the time here and done okay, but the engine says if I'm not going to put the knight on f3, I need to play d3 here. This is something else I can learn, because not only does that let out the dark squared bishop, but it also defends e4, so I don't have to worry about the pawn, and I can play knight to f3 here in a few moves. I'm just not going to do it now. I would do d3 first and then see what they do. They're probably going to get this knight out to c6. Now it says that's not one of my best moves. But see, now I would probably think to play that because I'm not worried about the pawn anymore. But now it says I should play a3, and maybe they'll play a5 or a6 or d6. Okay, and then I'll play e3. Reblocking in my dark squared bishop. How bad is knight to f3 here? It's not bad. I didn't want this video to go very long, but I wanted to refamiliarize myself with what I'm facing in the English opening. When I started this video, didn't this say 269? Now it says 286. I guess it's cataloged a few more games, unless I remembered that wrong, which is entirely possible. But anyway, what I wanted to do here was see what my opponents are actually playing against me, not what the Lichess database says opponents are going to play, or what the Masters database says I should expect. What opponents have actually played against me. And the two big ones that I see most often are e5 and knight to f6, d5 and e6. And it looks like I'm playing the right moves or close to the right moves very early, so I'm losing most of these games due to tactics later on. Not most of them, I'm winning most of these games. But the games that I'm losing, I'm not losing because of the opening. Now e6, which is called the Agincourt Defense, I'm losing most of these games. But there's only been, 24 of them. And that's because I'm playing knight to c3 here, but that's the most often recommended move here, according to the engine. Now I won every game where I played g3. There was just one. Oh, against Tanya Cute. Well, don't know if Tanya was cute or not. But in that one game, my opponent played a6 on the next move, when they probably should have played d5 or knight to f6. Okay, but backing up, what I usually play here was knight to c3, and that's fine. Oh, and my opponents have had a ton of different responses to this. None of them popular enough to be called the most common. Okay, maybe that's why I've lost a bunch of these games, is because at this point my opponent does something unpredictable, like d5. d5 is what I would expect here because they've protected that square, and by moving it, they're also adding the queen as a defender of d5. So when they play that, am I not supposed to take? See, I've taken every time, which is okay. Okay, so I take, and then they take back, and then my problem here is I should play d4 to keep them from coming any closer, but I've not been. I've been playing g3, and yes, they should play d4 immediately, which only one of them has. But they should play it here immediately because then I have to move the knight, and I've moved it to e4, but I should be moving it to b5, I guess. So when they attack it, then I come back this way? It says if I played that, they wouldn't attack it. They would play c5. But why wouldn't they play a6 now? They're ahead. Look at that. My opponent's ahead now. And their best move is to push this pawn forward one more time. Of course, if I take it, that opens up my king and gives me isolated doubled pawns here. That's bad. Okay, well, where did I go ahead? Where did I go behind? It was here when I played g3. Okay, yeah, I should have played d4 here. Okay, so e6 then is one that I need to watch out for because I'm fine here. And when my opponent plays here, I do the right thing by taking. But when they take back, I have to play d4 to keep it even. But when I play d4, are we still in the English? It says we are. All right, well, okay, so I got that part. And now I think I understand why I don't have a great winning percentage when my opponent plays e6 as the first move. Now again, I bet if we went through every one of those 24 games that have reached this position and we ran the analysis, it would surprise me a lot if I lost because of those next couple of moves where I've been playing g3 instead of d4. I would very much expect that I lost those games due to tactics later on. But one reason that we look at openings is so that we play the right moves 4 or 5 moves out and get a comfortable position to start with so that we're less likely to fall prey to those tactics later on. At least that's one reason I've been studying openings. I don't want to be in a losing position right away because then what if my opponent, finds among the best moves every time? I'm already behind. Now against d5, I've won about half and lost half and drew a tiny percentage. But against the two main responses, I'm winning the majority of the games. Are there any others here that I have lost a bunch against? Okay, knight to c6. I should immediately play d4 and turn it into a queen's pawn opening because what I've played here is g3 and knight to c3. But I should just go ahead and play d4. Wait, it says we have played that. What? Here it says I've never played d4 in this position, but when I put d4 on the board, it says I've got one game. Wait, okay, I bet this is a transposition again. I played d4 first, and when they got that knight out, I played c4 because I was doing queen pawn openings. Maybe. That's the only thing that explains that discrepancy. But when I started with c4 and they played this, I've been playing g3, but I need to play d4, which transposes here, and they should play d5, and now we're in the Queen's Gambit declined Chigorin variation, or Chigorin defense, because I'm going to play here, and they may or may not take that pawn. Yeah, this is from my d4 days. That's interesting that I only have one game in that position, because I played d4 a ton. So don't do my normal things if they play this weird move, which is the Anglo-Lithuanian variation. I should just go ahead and transpose to a d4 opening. Well, it's a good thing I played a bunch of d4 openings because I guess, still have some of that in my brain. Maybe I'm relatively familiar with it. I'll try to remember that as well. Anything else that I've had anything else that I've done poorly against? b5? Well, what am I? Oh, I'm just supposed to take it. But I didn't. I defended. Oh, I'm supposed to take it. And this is called the Jaenisch Gambit? That's probably not how you say that. And I should expect them to play a6, but I shouldn't take now. Because I'm already a pawn ahead. I should wait and let them take me, apparently, and just play e3. And of course, they're going to take here. But then I can take back with the bishop. And I'm doing fine. So I think the problem was the one time that I've ever seen that, I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to take the pawn because I wanted this to be putting pressure on the center, but I should have just taken it. Because after I play e3, my bishop's going to defend that square. Okay, I think I understand that. Any others that I've done poorly against? It seemed like there was, f5, which is the Anglo-Dutch defense. I have played d4 here, which is fine, but I should have just played knight to f3. Either way is fine, I think. But I think here if I play d4, that transposes to the Dutch, does it not? Yes, the Dutch defense. Okay. And I haven't done great against those, but I've only reached this position a few times on Lichess, according to this. But I could just play knight to f3, and I would be fine, and then we can just play chess after that. I don't know yet if I got out of this what I wanted to, and I think only time will tell as I play more games and I see those positions over and over again. But I do want to revisit this opening book, or my version of the opening book, every so often as I continue to play this opening, so I'll know whether or not certain moves are doing poorly for me and what I should have played instead. And I know that the engine can't quite calculate from openings the way that it can, say, in endgames, whereas in endgames it's incredibly accurate, but in openings it's known to fluctuate quite a bit. A move that says 0.5, when you play it, it might say 0.3 after you play it, and then it's 0.0 after that. So anyway, if any of you play the English, let me know if I messed something up here. Feel free to tell me in the comments, or if you don't play the English, have any questions, maybe one of us will be able to answer it. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.